This is episode 36 of the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. I'm Spencer, and my co-host today is guest geek, Dr. Benjamin Jeppsen.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure to have you here. I had the pleasure of reading Ben's book, How to Be a Super Missionary, recently, and was a great experience. Wanted to have him on the podcast, kind of discuss all things geeky, superhero-y, and missionary related. So I really liked it. So
thank you. That really means a lot.
Of course. More on that in a moment. We're going to start with some recommendations, which we always do on the podcast. I've been kind of stale lately. I couldn't think of what I've even been listening to or reading or whatever lately. But something that's always a staple in my listening library is the Follow Him podcast with Hank Smith and John By the Way.
Awesome.
I grew up listening to John By the Way, so to listen to him and Hank Smith talk and discuss the gospel and make bad dad jokes on a weekly basis is something that teenage me would have gone crazy over, and I get to experience it every week. So it's hard to complain about that.
100%.
So how about you?
Yeah, so I was listening to a recent episode of your podcast the other day when you did the State of Marvel, and your co-host, can't remember what his name was, but he recommended Batman the Brave and the Bold, this TV show.
Yeah, Joe is all about the Joker and Harley Quinn.
Very good. Well, I wanted to recommend an episode of that show.
All right.
When my kids were younger, we loved Batman the Brave and the Bold. It is, as he said, an amazing family-friendly version of Batman. And there's one particular episode, if you were to give just one episode of this show a try, it is The Mayhem of the Music Meister. The Mayhem of the Music Meister. It is a ridiculous episode, and if you listen closely, there is so many great subtle jokes. Neil Patrick Harris is the voice of the villain, the Music Meister, and his superpower is to hypnotize people by singing and getting them to rob banks and things for him. But the whole episode is a musical. It's like you're watching a Broadway play. And so there's a love ballad between Black Canary and Batman and Green Arrow. I mean, it's so great and it's so bonkers, but that episode was enough for me to buy the entire season so that I could watch that episode whenever I wanted with my kids. It's so fun. So highly recommend The Mayhem of the Music Meister from Batman the Brave and the Bold.
I love it. I told Joe during that episode that I was I want to add that to my list. I have too many things on my list right now, so I can't add it to my list right now.
Sure.
Plus, I think it's on Max for streaming, right?
It is now. Yeah.
So I don't have Max right now, so it's not on my list anyways. But
fair enough.
Just one more selling point for that show, and I'll look forward to that episode when I get to there. Whenever I get to there.
It's a good one.
So I won't go too much into your book right now. I will say just briefly, because I'm going to do a more formal review for a blog post later.
Cool.
And we had kind of talked about, I read the book, reading the book, and it's like, do you have it in the podcast? Do I write a blog post? We had kind of vaguely decided, we'll see, we'll do both. And now that I just finished reading it this morning, and I'm glad that we decided to do both, because I think it'd be great to kind of take it from two different angles. So less formal conversation tonight, more formal review probably next month. Having little kids crawling over me, it was hard to sit down and read it.
I hear that.
It's the first book that I've actually read in I don't know how long. I listen to audiobooks all the time on my commute, but to actually pick up a book and read, these you accurately called them parables about superheroes and pop culture, and like little mini devotionals about Batman and Ant-Man and the Flash and all the others. And it was if for it was perfect for a book that I couldn't read all in one setting because logistically it didn't make sense. But it
Well,
worked
yeah, and
out
it's
perfectly.
it's not meant to. It's not a novel, right? It's
Yeah,
when you have time, for sure.
and it's definitely, and you alluded to like, oh, and back on the Batman chapter we talked about this, and during the Superman chapter I mentioned this. So it's like, the chapters do kind of build on each other, but at the same time it was nice that like, oh yeah, I forgot about that because it was a month ago that I read that Batman chapter. But it came at a very good time as I was going through, um, I won't go into the personal details, but just
Sure.
stresses with work and changing a job, etc. Um, I know more than once I sent you a picture of me reading the book in front of the what is supposed to be the McKinney Temple site. Um,
Yeah.
to be determined. I don't know I don't understand half the stuff that's going on with that. Construction hasn't started, but I still will. It's 10 minutes from my job, so I pull up and would read your book there, on my way to work. So it was
And that's
perfect
awesome.
for where I was in the last few months. Um,
I bet you guys you're excited to have a temple so close.
oh yeah, I mean the Dallas Temple's an hour away, maybe 45 minutes, so it's not
Okay.
bad. But like the McKinney Temple is going to be half an hour, which especially since my kids are young enough that we need a babysitter to have the McKinney Temple any amount closer than the Dallas Temple is a blessing. Um,
Absolutely. We're 2.5 hours from ours. I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we drive down to winter quarters. And so every conference, every conference, we're just hoping someday. But
oh
there's
yeah,
not a lot of people in South Dakota, so it'll probably be a little bit, but we'll keep praying for it.
yeah. My dad did a teacher conference in South Dakota once when I was in high school or middle school. I can't remember when exactly, and yeah, that's pretty much like that's pretty much what I remember is like what's in South Dakota.
Not a whole lot, and we're even on the opposite side of Mount Rushmore, so we don't even really have that.
And that's what I remember is Mount Rushmore.
You know,
All right. Well, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, church, family, professional, because it all kind of, yeah, church, family, professional, mission, they all play into your book, and I
yeah.
think you weaved it all together beautifully. So, give you a
Well,
little like 3 minutes or less kind of bio about where you come from.
yeah. So all this book does kind of synthesize a lot of my passions. When I did my first year at BYU, I wanted to work for ESPN. I was in the communications broadcasting program. That's what I was going to do. But then I took a theories of interpersonal communication. That was the first psychology related class that I took ever in my life. And I was like, this is really interesting. And then I went on my mission. I served a mission in Albania. Amazing experience. Tiny little mission with only 40 elders in the whole mission.
Holy crap!
And I was blown away by the multicultural experiences out there, where people, they live differently, and learning to embrace that there are different definitions of the good life, and so I really got interested in psychology while on my mission, and came home, changed my major to psych, but I didn't really know what it was that I wanted to do with it. I just knew that I was fascinated with the way people think. I was fascinated by the field of mental health, but what were we going to go with that? And it was after my first year in psych, my second year of college, but my first year in psych. It was the first year after I came home from my mission. I came home in October 2004, and the following summer, 2005, was when the movie Batman Begins came out. And I know it's cliche to say that a movie is a life-changing moment, but this was. Batman, I enjoyed superheroes. I had never read a comic in my life, though. Uh, I was just a kind of a casual fan that enjoyed superhero movies and stuff like that. And Batman Begins rocked my world. As he's training to fight evil, and he is trained in two principles primarily. It was having the will to act and the courage to do what's necessary. And I was like, this is what I want. I want to help people have the will to act and the courage to do what's necessary to change their lives. this is what I want to do with psychology. And I went back and I saw Batman Begins 6 times in the theater. I loved this movie, and it was because of the psychology of it that I became a fan of Batman. And so that's when I said, what did Christopher Nolan use to inspire this movie? Like, what were the comic stories to inspire this movie? And it was Batman: The Long Halloween, Batman Year One, and Batman: The Man Who Falls. And so those were the first comics I ever read. And that's where I started learning about the character. And it was all from this perspective of psychology and mental health, and how do we be our best selves. And so it all kind of exploded from there. And when I went to graduate school and I was writing papers, I was always thinking about, well, how does this work? And I started citing Batman Begins in some of my papers. And
How did that go over with your professors citing
funny,
Batman?
it's funny, yeah. So on the first time I did that, I was a paper and I cited the line, "It's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you." Great line from Batman Begins. That's kind of a behaviorist perspective, that we define ourselves with our actions. And so I cited this, and the director of training, he was teaching this class, and he circled it with a smiley face and said, "Cute, but let this be the last time you ever reference Batman in a doctoral paper." So I took that as a challenge, of course,
Oh,
at that point. And so anyway, so that's where that kind of started. And then as I started teaching as a faculty member at Augustana University in South Dakota, is where I started teaching. And they have this class called First Year Seminar. And in the first year seminar, the goal is to teach students basic college success skills, get them oriented to college, basic public speaking skills, ethical reasoning. And they said, as long as you teach those skills in the first year seminar class, you can put it in any context you want, put it in something interesting. And at first I was like, I have no interest in teaching this class. It's not like psychology, until I realized, wait, could I do a Batman class? And they're like, well, could you do ethical reasoning? Heck yeah. Should Batman kill the Joker or not? And
like
so
everything Batman does is ethical reasoning.
that's all it is. Man, Batman's a case study in ethics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I started thinking, okay. And then I started adapting at first it was just a cool class on Batman. But going back to that first time I saw this movie, it was, well, wait, there are lessons that I could build into this class, lessons about mental health and how students could, develop a personal oath and mission statement for life like Batman has, and learn to approach anxiety in the same way Batman does. Like, Batman doesn't have PTSD because he goes towards the things that make him anxious rather than away from. And so I started developing that. And so there was this kind of a cool thing. And that was the first time I started having an idea of Batman and psychology in a book over on that topic. At the same time, I got called to serve as a early morning seminary teacher in my stake here in Sioux Falls. And so I'm getting up early and I'm teaching these high school students, and they were supposed to sign up for devotionals, and every now and then they would forget, of course, and there would be no devotional. And so in that moment, I just started kind of coming up with these object lessons based in superheroes, because that's what I was doing in school. And I enjoy drawing from popular media in all of my teaching. And as I talk about in the book, when I was a kid doing seminary and I would do devotionals, my mom would teach me to look for the sacrament meeting talk in everything. Everything we did, there's a sacrament meeting talk in that. Look for, and so I would start finding these pop culture devotionals, and we'd show a clip in seminary, and then I would talk about a gospel principle from that. And so I would do that for my own classes. And so at the same time, I kind of had these two. I was applying superheroes in my calling at church and applying superheroes in my work. It was great. It was amazing. And that led to two.
There.
What was that?
Just living the good life.
It was amazing, right? The best thing ever. And so it led to two really cool things where, so I had a nephew leave on his mission who was a huge superhero fan like myself. And so I just started once a month, every fast Sunday, I started sending him a letter I said, we learn about missionary work from this superhero and from this superhero. And I just kind of kept doing that for 1 month at a time. And throughout his mission. And then at some point, my wife said, Ben, you should compile these together and turn them into a book. And I'd been sending them to more than just that. The nephew was where it started, but then I had other nieces and another niece who was a huge fan who was getting ready. And she said, hey, will you send it to me while I'm preparing to be a missionary? And so I had this kind of like this little mailing list that I was sending them to my family, and that's where this book came from. And it was just this love of superheroes, but and kind of like the Savior, looking for ways to teach the gospel using what the people are familiar with. And so just as I started doing it with mental health, and now that turned into something really cool. I go to Comic Cons and I talk about the psychology of Batman and lessons of mental health that we can learn from Batman. I go to Salt Lake City. I've done the FanX at Salt Lake City multiple times. I do SuperCon here in Sioux Falls. I've gone to a conference in Orlando where I get to teach these mental health lessons from Batman, and doing that
That
same
title
thing.
actually sounds familiar, so I feel like I probably saw your thing at the. I don't think I went to it, but I remember seeing like on the program at FanX that like
No
the
kidding.
mental health of Batman or whatever. That rings a bell. But since Batman isn't like my niche, like I
Sure.
didn't go to it, but I took note of it.
That's awesome. But yeah, it is that's something else that I put right at the beginning of the book. For those who have super ears to hear, let them hear. Right? This isn't the stuff that everybody's going to eat up. But for some people, my hope is that there are some people who aren't going to pick up a John By the Way book or a Randy Bott mission preparation book. Just like there are some people aren't going to go to Barnes and Noble to pick up a self-help book, but they might pick up something about Batman that teaches them.
Mhm.
And so that kind of became this kind of goal to, can I inspire people through a means, through a door that interests them? Because there's a subset of people who really love this stuff, superheroes and comic books. And if I can use that as an avenue to inspire people, then this is a great opportunity.
Well, and I love, and I'll mention this when I do the actual review as well, but I loved that, you pulled from like Batman Begins, you pulled from um, the Wonder Woman movie, you pulled from MCU movies, but you also pulled from like Superman comics and X-Men comics. So it's like, it's not just the popular media of the MCU or the DC movies. It's going back to the source material with the comics, but also here's what we saw in recent years in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And so it's again, it's you're finding something for everybody, that it's not just comic book fans, it's comic book fans and comic book movie fans. And it's when, because when I initially picked up your book, I was thinking, I don't know the comics.
Hmm.
I watched the X-Men and Spider-Man cartoons when I was a kid. I watched superhero movies. Really didn't start watching superhero movies until I was in college, and then continuing till now. But so to have like, I know the whole, Ben Parker dies kind of
Sure.
thing, but anything more source material than that was all the movies were all I knew basically.
That
So going in, and it gave me an idea of like, almost, I wouldn't necessarily know where to start to pick up a comic exactly, but it's like it. But it was also like accessible to, I haven't read this comic, but I still enjoyed it.
that was part of my one of my favorite parts of once I started writing these letters. I would decide at the beginning, on after the fast Sunday when I sent the previous month's uh, letter, I would make a decision. Okay, next month is going to be about this superhero, and I would go and learn about him. A lot of these deeper dive comics that I reference, I hadn't read. Like I said, I didn't get into actually reading some comics, and mostly just Batman comics that I've actually read. And so when I started doing, Ant Man and Spider Man, some of these others, Rogue, I went and did. It was really fun. I would start researching and reading about them, and it was in doing so to look for those gospel principles. Then when I found the gospel principle, that became my scripture study for that month, was these principles associated with that hero, and it
Your
was
comic
just
book
so.
study was the scripture study.
What was yeah, right. Start with the comics, find the principle, and then translate it over. And so it was, and I had this little journal that I would carry with me around at church, and every now and then these ideas would come, and I'd write it down and go look it up later and learn more about those comics and find them, and find accessing those connections was a really cool part of putting this together.
That's where I think you work really well with having you on the podcast because I feel like, not all the time. We don't always put gospel connections on the blog or on the podcast, but having being able to like watch a Disney movie that's like Inside Out or Moana. We took my daughter to see Moana 2 for her birthday, and I was like crying over the spiritual implications of what Moana's singing about. And it, so it fits really well with kind of what we're about here.
That's awesome.
And then we also do just the, you know, here are the weird things going on with this video game that has nothing to do with the gospel. So, so it's fun to have both sides.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have the question written down to ask you. I'm almost not sure how to if you'll be able to answer. Favorite superhero besides Batman? I feel like I had to put besides Batman on there
Yeah, you
because
knew where I was going after
I'm
having
looking
read the book.
behind you on that those shelves, and it's filled with Batman figurines.
And that's you're
Our
seeing less
listeners
than
won't be
half of
able
it.
to tell that, but it's filled with Batman.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is to have college. So this is my office on campus, and
Oh
so I
wow!
love it when students come in here, and they're always shocked because I have way more Batman stuff than any book here, and you're seeing only a small portion. There's a lot, but anyway, man, yeah. So obviously Batman's my guy, but so after Batman, I mean, there's a lot of heroes that I do dig. You know, Spider-Man, I love Spider-Man and the lesson of responsibility that he has to learn. You know, one of the things I love about Spider-Man is there's something very real about his origin story when he first gets his powers is not to be a hero. He wants to get rich with it. That's his first thing, right? And I feel like there's something very real about that. And there's that he has to go through this humbling experience to realize, oh no, I I need to be something more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like Spider-Man. I like Captain America. I really think his stalwartness in terms of his faithfulness and that he stays true to his values. Um, and the last one that I would identify, and I hope that this counts as not Batman, but it's Tim Drake Robin. So Tim Drake is the third Robin that Batman has. First was Dick Grayson, then there was Jason Todd, and then there was Tim Drake. And the reason why I love Tim Drake is most superheroes have a traumatic past. Like most superheroes, something happens to them, like Peter Parker. You know, they have something that happens that leads them to be a hero. And that's not the case for Tim Drake. Tim Drake just saw a need, and he steps in. Like his parents, he's not an orphan. He's one of the very few heroes that's not an orphan, and he just he, he comes into play. So Batman's second Robin, Jason Todd, gets killed by the Joker, and so Batman doesn't have a Robin because he doesn't want to lose a sidekick again. But he's starting getting more and more aggressive. He's getting darker, and Tim Drake is just this super smart kid who recognizes that. He's figured out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he can see, and he says, "You need a Robin. Robin keeps you from breaking your rules, and you need me. And I'm really smart, and I can do this. I figured out you're Bruce Wayne on my own. I'm a detective, and you need help, and I'm going to do that." And I just love that about someone who just sees a need and steps in. And so he's probably uh, he's probably my favorite hero after Batman.
I think that's great, and from what I recall of the chapter you wrote about Robin, but that rings a bell right there. They're like, yeah, like Batman needed him. Like Batman thought he was fine, thought he could do it on his own, and no, no, he didn't. And it makes him seem kind of like Captain America, where it's like he's just a honest, good person, and he just, like you said, sees a need and wants to help.
Man, that was one of my favorite chapters to write because even though Batman's my favorite hero, I very much more identify with Robin than Batman. Like so in that chapter, right? It's about from a missionary perspective, it's the power of a good junior companion, but just that not everybody is in these high visibility callings,
Mm-hmm.
and the church relies on people who are not seen working hard and taking responsibility. And I very much more identify with that. I don't I see myself more as a sidekick than a superhero,
I
and so
agree.
I really enjoyed looking for all those people in the scriptures and those different people in the church history who played essential roles but aren't often in the spotlight.
See, I read that chapter around the same time that we were reading about Hiram Smith in
Yeah,
the last couple weeks in Come Follow Me, And it's something that had been going through my mind as well, that like, I don't need to be in the spotlight per se, but I'm like, I'm here. I want to do stuff. I want to lead, quote unquote, whatever. Do something, and I feel like I'm just in the background doing not much of anything, for many reasons. But it was like, Heavenly Father, what am I doing? So and then reading that chapter, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll chill out a little bit. And it kind of reminded me because I have a lot of respect for Hiram Smith, and he definitely plays into that sidekick role that I told a friend, like, oh my gosh, how much humility would Hiram have
Man,
had to have, and like I want to emulate that.
especially as the older brother too, right?
Exactly.
Like, and to be willing to just take a back seat to that younger brother and do everything he can to support him. It's
Yeah.
amazing, and die next to him.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I think he's very much a Tim Drake missionary,
100%.
because he deserves to be called a hero, not a sidekick. But yeah,
Love
agreed.
it.
Um, well, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
You
It's my
know,
next get to
I,
know you question.
I've thought about that question a lot. Like
It's
flight is
an
what
impossible
superheroes do.
one, really.
But I was thinking about flight, and I don't know how practical flight really is. I guess it would be handy to just be able to like fly to my office from home, you know.
Mm.
But besides that, I'm not sure how well because, when Superman flies and he carries people with him, like the physics when we look at it don't really make sense. He'll hold people by one arm and they're just kind of floating next to him. But really carrying someone while you're flying with them would be extremely difficult and awkward. And so I'm not really sure how useful flight is. And so I land on I think a genius intellect. I think that would be the one having like genius to the level of a superpower intellect. And I think that would be the most useful. I think I could do the most good with that in a practical setting. Um, and so yeah, I think that's where I would land on is just that, just be brilliant. I wish I was smarter than I am.
I hear you there. A lot of the time, I would have loved that superpower when I went to physical therapy school, because I was like, what?
Yeah,
I mean, I've learned. I mean, like most professions, I'm sure I learned so much more once I was actually in the profession. Um,
absolutely.
what I knew in school, I'm like, that was nothing. And maybe I should have studied harder. I don't know, but that's another story.
No,
But yeah,
I
to have that intellect can change things for
yeah,
how
I
you
hear
interact
you.
with other people.
Graduate school was rough. Has always been kind of hard. I've never tested into gifted programs or anything, and so yeah, it's school's hard.
Mm. Yeah. Besides Batman, what would you say your like top three fandoms are, or maybe including Batman?
Well, yeah, so DC is probably my number
Yeah,
one.
I think
I
that's
love the
pretty
DC.
much a given with your
Yeah,
office.
and I don't know if it counts as a separate fandom or not. I like Marvel heroes too. Like I'm not one of those like I'm a DC guy, not a Marvel guy. Batman's my favorite, but as you saw in the book, I'm a fan of both. I'm a fan
Yeah.
of superheroes. But after those, I've got my Stormlight Archives hoodie on right now.
Okay.
I'm a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. So just last December, I was at Dragonsteel Nexus, and I was able to do two panels: mental health and Brandon's writing, and neurodivergency in the Cosmere and beyond. I'm a huge fan of the Cosmere and how Brandon, especially how Brandon handles mental health. And I'm working on Wind and Truth right now, and so because I want to read it first before I listen to it. I do the audiobooks a lot, but I try to read it the first time because it's easy for me to miss stuff when I listen. And you're right, it is hard to find time to sit down and actually read a
Yeah.
book. But so I love Stormlight, and so after superheroes and the Cosmere and Stormlight Archives, uh, we're a big Harry Potter family. Um, I
Excellent.
wasn't before I met my wife. You know, funny story. Like when Harry Potter was all the rage, I was like, for whatever reason, I don't know why we do this, but like there was something about where I was like, I'm going to show you how much I'm not a fan of Harry Potter. Like I'm not going to be like everybody else. And it was funny how we try to be unique that way, and we cut something out of our life that could be really fun. Um, until I met this really cool girl that I thought was really pretty, and she was like, "Hey, I want to go see Harry Potter 5. It's coming out next weekend, opening night. We're gonna go, right?" And I'm like, "Oh heck yeah, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan." And so,
Which is funny because that's probably my least favorite movie
well, we
of
get
the
this.
eight.
So I go to this movie with her pretending to know what things are, but this is my first movie. I hadn't seen anything before number 5. And so Cedric dies in number 4, and they're like mourning him, and they're in
You're like,
the
who
room of
is this kid?
requirement. And yeah, and I lean over like, "Can you remind me who Cedric is?" And she's like, "What?"
Oh, you're
Like,
lucky you got any more dates after that
I
one.
know.
You're lying through your teeth.
I had to come clean after that. She's like, "You
Uh-huh.
haven't."
There's no coming back from that lie.
Nope, there really isn't. Since then, though, I've read the books, listened to the books multiple times. We've seen these movies so many times. We recently went to Orlando with our kids to go spend some time at Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade, and it was amazing. Love that universe. So I would definitely put the Wizarding World up there.
Two follow-up questions.
Okay,
Um, what's your Hogwarts house?
I am a Hufflepuff, loyal, strong, and
Yes.
true.
Oh, I'm not wearing my Hufflepuff sweatshirt right now, but I had a friend give me a Hufflepuff sweatshirt a few years ago, and it's one of my favorites.
Love it. Oh yeah.
And I have a one of my best friends sent me a T-shirt that's a badger with like big biceps that says Hufflepuff.
I'll have to look for that. That's
I'll
fantastic.
send you a picture later.
Very
So
good. Very
yeah,
good. I want that for a gym shirt.
there you go. Oh, it's I love it. It's one of my favorites. Other question and more. Get back to me later on this one because I haven't read any of the Cosmere books. I know it's like a cardinal sin with, you know, the cross section of our
Okay.
religion and our geeky culture that I've not read. But the whole thing is, I've asked a couple of friends this, like where a good place to start is because I know the Cosmere is like so many different corners or what
Yeah.
different series, and I'm like, if someone can give me a straight answer about a good book to start with, to make sure that I can like I buy one book or one series or whatever on Audible, I try that one out and see if I like it before I invest any more time in this. And no one's given me a straight answer yet. So there's your
Interesting.
challenge.
I think there's when I've heard people talk about this, almost very consistently people say Mistborn. I and I would agree with people that that's a good accessing point. It's shorter than Stormlight. It cuts to the chase a little bit quicker. Personally, I like Stormlight better, but I don't know if Stormlight's the right place to start unless you're willing to give 1,200 pages a shot. I mean,
Mm.
they're huge, and that's why people usually say don't start with Stormlight because they're massive. But and Mistborn is cool. I like Stormlight better, but I do think Mistborn is a good jumping point to get a sense of the style of writing and see if it's something you like.
Yeah, because the way I typically will do a series, lately I've been working on Percy Jackson and Animorphs, but I've done it with Harry Potter and Narnia as I tend to work like chronologically or release order or
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's very systematic, but I understand that the Cosmere is not systematic. It's all these different pieces.
The Cosmere's a lot more like the MCU,
Yeah,
right? You
they
have different
overlap,
worlds
but
that
they
are
aren't the same.
they're kind of running parallel, and you have to
Yeah,
find those points. And that's okay. Like, but
and it just
within
makes the
you,
starting point hard to find.
sure, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I think they are written well enough, though, that independently enough that like you could read the
Yeah.
first series, the first trilogy of Mistborn, and you're not, and that's a good way to start.
Okay. Next time I have Audible credits come around, I'll put that on my list.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
I wait for like the cheap Audible credits to come around. I'll do like the 3 months for $1 a month, and
That's me. I just finished one of those. I just finished.
yeah,
My calendar reminder just came up to cancel Audible because
yeah,
my 3 month $1 a month
exactly.
promo has ended.
'Cause I've got to finish off the Percy Jackson series that I'm buying up, and then after that I'll put Mistborn on my list.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right, last question for you, and this is more a discussion.
Mhm.
Um, in regards to your book specifically, but also, well, little backstory. That in case I've written about it on the blog before. I've talked about it a little bit. I've talked about it before, but I I came home early from my mission after 3 months twice. I went out for 3 months, MTC plus 3 months. Was home for about 11 months. Tried to go back out for. They sent me to my home mission for 3 months to see how I do, and came home again. So I have a very complicated emotional relationship with missionary work, especially in a formal sense.
Yeah.
um, but like, and I've worked with a therapist about it, and even in recent years, and it just kind of the emotions kind of ebb and flow about it. Um, but I mean, one thing I loved about the book is that I could find parallels in or applicable. Um, I could find the book applicable for my life now, for a missionary preparing, a missionary out in the field. Um, but I want to get it from your perspective too. That like we're all in different positions. We're member missionaries. We're single, married, RM, no mission, senior mission, currently serving, whatever the situation is. How do you think your book could help member missionaries at any stage of life?
Well, first, thank you for the question. This is something I kind of went back and forth on when I titled it, honestly, because I don't. Most of the lessons in there aren't just like this is how you proselyte as a full-time missionary wearing a tag. It
Mm-hmm.
really isn't. But I named it that because that's how the book was formed, right? They were letters to my nieces and nephews who are serving or preparing to serve. But the gospel lessons, I think you're right, 100% that they're really just about being disciples of Christ. Whether looking for member missionary opportunities, some of them are really about sharing the gospel, but a lot of them are about our covenant relationship with Jesus Christ. I was thinking about some of these chapters, and uh, one of the parables or the metaphors in here that I use more than ever as a bishop when I'm teaching my priest quorum is there's the story in the first Thor movie, when Thor has tried to lift Mjolnir for the first time. He's been banished. He goes and he finds the hammer where it's being studied by Shield. He gets to it. He tries to lift it and he can't, and he's devastated. He realizes, I really am not worthy. I really am banished. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's sitting in this room. Simultaneously, around that time, Loki is up in Asgard, and he finds out that though Thor is banished, there's a path for him to return. And Loki was like, wait a minute. He's thinking, I thought that I got him banished. I thought he was gone. I thought I was rid of my brother. And he realizes, I got to make sure Thor doesn't find that path back to Asgard, which is humility and changing his life in a way that makes him worthy. And so he goes and he appears to Thor, and he lies to him. He says, what you've done is so bad, you can't return. Your dad is dead. Your mom has forbidden your return. You're gone. I'm sorry. And he's trying to discourage him from finding that path. And I think that I reference that more than any of the others, any of the other lessons in here with my priests, because I think that's a super valuable lesson to realize that that's what Satan tries to do to us. First he tries to get us to sin, and then once we sin, then he tries to pile on this guilt that says there's nothing you can do to return. Don't even try to repent. Don't even try, because he knows that once we do, that we will find mercy, that we will find love, not shame. And
Not even just sin. Like it's that I feel that with a new job, like I've felt that like I'm not getting this. I'm not adapting. And feeling like, oh, I'm like, what did I do? Why did I leave my old job? Like
and and there's no hope, right? Like, and I'm never
yeah.
going to get this. We start to get to this point of like, this helplessness. And I just think there's so much power in recognizing that lie. And that's not, right. Like you said, that's something that can apply to your job. That's something that applies to all of us who are trying to follow that covenant path back to Savior. That's not a lesson just for missionaries. And so I do think that this is something that is applicable to anybody, no matter where you're at, whether you're trying to share the gospel or not. These are lessons that simply we can draw from these superheroes and these stories that if you love these stories, They're the lessons that we can draw from them to help us in so many different aspects of our life, so many different elements in our life.
I think it's great, and that there are many times that I think I texted you that like, oh my gosh, I read the Hulk chapter, and it really helped with how I was feeling frustrated with my kid, and it really does the these lessons, and it's the kind of thing that I know we do a lot on the blog too, that like we're grabbing these gospel parallels and stuff that maybe they're applicable to missionary work, but they're also just applicable. So
Man, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I can't tell you how much it means when you shared that and said this helped me. It just,
yeah.
oh man, it just brings me so much joy
And
to
I'll be
hear that.
rereading some of those chapters when I'm like, I'll be thinking of that when like I get upset with my daughter. I'll be like thinking of the Hulk or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't want to fight the wrong enemy, right? Like,
Yeah. I was
absolutely.
thinking about that just tonight when she wouldn't sit down for scripture. She's like, you know what? No, I need to focus in on what the real purpose is here. What we're really trying to do.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it.
Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Man, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I've loved it.
I look forward to formally reviewing the book itself. It's How to Be a Super Missionary. People can buy it on Amazon, I'm sure.
Yep.
But I'll put some links up. And great discussion tonight. I'd love to have you back again another time if the topic presents itself.
100%. I'd love to be back. Thanks again. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we don't represent the church in any official capacity. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and to review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Select episodes are available on our YouTube channel. Show notes and additional content are available on our blog, latterdaysaintgeeks.com. Intro and outro music were provided by David Schradell.